Noah how do you pronounce his name?
Baumbach?
Baumbach?
Something like that? Baumbach?
Baumbach. I'm imagining it's like a kind of...
It's probably Baumbach.
Baumbach.
Welcome back to Life Lessons in Film. Today we'll be making sense of life through while we're young. Ben Stiller, Adam Driver, Naomi Watts, other people.
Did you say Adam Driver?
Random Driver? Adam Driver.
Random Driver?
Yeah.
And that lady, what's her name?
I know her.
Mamma Mia?
Ah, that's it. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, trying out some new drip. So if y'all like it, type hat in the comments below or drippy hat. And then give us some feedback.
Type drippy hat.
Yeah. Great film.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Second time watching it. I like it even more
First
this time. And it's so good at capturing people.
You know, if you cannot relate to this movie at all, where are you living? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because I want to live there.
Yeah.
You know, you are lucky.com.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can absolutely relate to Jamie. I've had a Jamie in my life. And so I feel like the movie is very realistic in that way. I think the one thing, and we didn't talk about this, I saved this for this review because we do try as well to not discuss it a lot, the movie after we watch it. We try to kind of have this as fresh as possible. Yeah. So there are just certain things that we did discuss it, but then I didn't want to really share about, certain things. Yeah. For example, the one thing that I feel, I'm not sure if Noah Baumbach, I'm not sure if he was trying to do this or if it just so happened that Jamie was a young guy because he's a millennial, 20-something millennial. Adam Driver is a Gen X, 40-something Gen X, right?
Ben Stiller.
I don't know, Ben Stiller.
We got Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts, an older couple, probably in their 40s.
Ben Stiller is Josh, and he's a 40-something. Like do you give them?
Let's give them a quick, So they're living in, New York? Ben Stiller's character Josh is a documentarian who's been working on his first documentary was very successful. I think this is just the second one. It's been taking like 10 years, and he's never even getting close to finishing it. It's one of those, you know. And then his wife. Oh, she does, but her dad. She
works for her dad as a producer.
Oh yeah, that's right. And who is a successful documentary maker as well. Yeah, and then one day, Ben Stiller is doing a lecture about documentaries, and Adam Driver and his wife come down, start talking to him, praising him, all that kind of stuff, gushing, and then they start hanging out. And then, it's this whole thing where the two older couple, Naomi and Ben, they feel like, hey, this is really great hanging out with this young couple. It brings this new life to us, don't you think? We feel like we've kind of fallen into a rut. And then their friends at their age are kind of wondering, why are you hanging out with young people? Like they're a lot younger than you, know? Yeah. And so there's this kind of, one of the themes is kind of like, when people seem to lose their verve for life, or is it when age starts to affect them in ways where they start to get more, routine and not as spontaneous, and then how do you gain that back? And it's all versus youth versus kind of like the ups and downs of being youthful versus being wiser. And
but then the thing with Adam Driver's character Jamie, he goes to this guy's class and says, well, I just came to your class because I love you, like I saw your documentary and I absolutely just, it blew my mind. And where did you even find that? Oh, on eBay, I found it and I got it. And I'm so happy. I'm really, compliments him and inflates this guy's ego. And we ultimately learn that that's what he was trying to do, because he really he planned this. Ultimately, you realize that he didn't necessarily idolize this guy, but knew of his connections to this filmmaker, the wife's dad. And you find that out ultimately because his movie gets picked up basically by the dad's, the stepdad's agent or something like that. Yeah, so he basically is using Josh and isn't really, this is not an altruistic relationship whatsoever, but then Josh isn't aware of this. He does become aware of it over time with little things that just keep popping up and basically Jamie just winning and but I don't know how to explain it. It's so hard.
Well, that's also a thing too, where Jamie has this elaborate scheme basically to get to Josh's wife's dad, who could be a good connection into getting him into documentary filmmaking, being successful. But inevitably the cracks.
He
manipulates his way constantly. Like everything is a lie or set up or it's faked or something.
Yeah.
But also, inevitably the cracks start to show, which is so. Not only is it like, and it's interesting because at the end of the movie, the first time I watched it, I think I was more because at the end of the movie, they're planning to adopt a kid and they're kind of content with just accepting that they're a certain age and that's okay. They had their time when they were younger. And now they're, it's okay to embrace where they're at in life, the new stage in life. But then they notice that the young guy, Jamie, that bamboozled him. He's shooting up, in terms of his career. And they're kind of like,
looking at a magazine.
Featuring
Jamie.
And then Josh Ben's character, Ben Stiller, is kind of thinking, it's like, you know what? You're right. I'm over it now. You're right. He's not an evil person. He's just young. And for me, the first time I watched it, I was kind of thinking, it's that kind of ambition versus wisdom kind of thing of the youth just doing whatever it takes to kind of make their mark in the world versus when you get older and you realize, there's more to life or there's more to things than that. But I've kind of changed my tune a little bit. And I think it's a nice way to end it than being, say, like, he's not evil. He's just, NPD or something, a narcissistic personality disorder or something like that. But I would say that there is more to it than just he's young, because not all young people will create these grand schemes to use people.
And that's the thing that I didn't talk about with you, where I was like, I don't know if Noah Baumbach was trying to do this,
right? Because
I was like, this is the part that I think I would say is maybe like less realistic, because not all young people are that way. Just because you're young doesn't mean you're a douchebag. Mm-hmm. And also not all people in their 40s are the way that, so I think that whole classifying people's personalities according to generations is such a problematic thing, because if that were the case, I've been 60 years old since I was born. Because just like looking at the things we like, the things like that we gravitate towards, how we are when we interact with friends, we just are...
I feel like I've always been, whenever I was with people, I would always say things ironically, because I could never take current slang seriously or current trends or current anything seriously. So I'd always be that like uncle or grandpa that is already at that point where they realize trends come and go, so they never take anything super seriously. There's always a tad bit of irony attached to it of like...
Yeah, but like even as you are doing that, like even as we may do stuff like that, it's never like in a condescending way where we're like the friends of ours who do enjoy these kinds of things that we don't necessarily not enjoy them. We love all of these things, right? It's just a matter of the language that we have. That we don't necessarily have, like we're not up on the language, basically. The point is, not all, like, if you're young, you're not automatically a certain way. And if you're older or old, you're not automatically a certain way. So that isn't the issue that I had with this. When I said in the beginning that if you can't relate to the story, then you're living, some kind of utopic life that I want a bit of a piece of. I wasn't saying that, I have had experiences with young people who are that way, and therefore that I reinforce Noah's what he's trying basically portraying ultimately, even if that wasn't the plan. The fact that he's like, in the end it ends as, he's not whatever, he's just young. That was it says to me that, okay, so that means young people are this way and we just let them go. That is not the case. People that are narcissistic, as this guy is, this is a story of narcissistic manipulation, selfishness, absolute and utter selfishness. That's what that story is about, and doing everything you can to get what you want. And I think the thing that reinforces, which is funny because I don't think if he was wanting to say that young people are that way, when Josh reveals, what has actually been happening, the fact that Jamie has been appropriating people's entire lives. Like he says that his mom had cancer, even though it was the wife's whose mom had cancer. And he reveals these things, but the wife's dad is like, so what?
Kind of like the Oscars, but for documentaries kind of thing.
And they're like, so what? The story is good. So that's the point there is. They're exactly like him too. Do whatever you have to do to get a story.
And that's a good segue into the point that for me, I also am looking at differently. So I've looked at this movie, a couple of things I look at differently the second time watching the movie. And again, the first time I watched it, at the end when Josh wants to expose Jamie for the fraud that he is and get everyone, applauding him for exposing this fraud, this trickster, and then no one really seems to care. Of course, like, Jamie's life, it's, the people that know Jamie's wife is like, "Ah, such an asshole," and like, our lives aren't what people think we are. It's a lot of work to it's a big facade, really.
Yeah.
And then of course, like Josh and his wife also know that he's a prick, right? So, but watching it again, and maybe now it's this time, maybe I'm more familiar with Werner Herzog's method, because they talk about method a lot in the movie. Ben Stiller has a certain kind of method when it comes to making a good, pure documentary film. So yeah, that's another thing about the movie, is talking about kind of like what is pure cinema or pure documentary style versus kind of a bit manufactured. But is it more about entertainment and getting people through the story and enjoying it? Or is it more about truly just capturing a piece of life, some objective view of some instance of time, And but the thing is, yeah, there is some subjectivity to it. For most of the movie, I agree with Josh's, the main character's point of view, about obviously just being genuine to whatever happens. That's the story,
Mm-hmm.
and not trying to make it into a very digestible, packageable, mass enjoyable kind of thing, right? It's the story's a story. People that'll get it will get it. But I'm also a big Werner Herzog fan, and he has this ecstatic truth method where he will add things or straight up just lie about certain things in his movie, and his way of kind of exalting his point or his theme to a whole new level that he wouldn't be able to if he just said, "Oh, this is what's going on," very, factually.
Yeah, I get it, right? But like, is Werner Herzog doing what Josh is doing?
Well, that's the difference.
Because that's the difference, right? Like, he actually, first of all, acknowledges what he does, because I think sometimes when you're storytelling, it's kind of like, a true story.
Mm-hmm.
You tell a true story that's why they say based on a true story. There are certain elements of the story that they will either embellish on, or they'll add things that were not there to add to the sentiment, to maybe have people drawn into the story much more, or to sympathize or empathize with the story much more than what, because like the truth sometimes isn't necessarily pretty, maybe it's too hard, or the truth sometimes, if you present it as it was, it doesn't necessarily capture the feeling, like it doesn't come off that way on film, and so then you have to do certain things that you understand as a filmmaker that will tap into people's emotions, and that's something that you want, because maybe the story is important to tell as a documentary maker. It's something that's important, and you want people to be behind it and sympathetic and supportive of it, and so then you do certain things like that. However, Jamie is, I wouldn't really give him that kind of credit. I think it's less about telling the story in a way that will be more captivating and honoring the people in the documentary, which I think Werner Herzog tries to do much more. It's more about himself. He's trying, he wants to have this profound documentary, like to sell himself, to elevate himself into the status of just like celebrity status. And so he does anything. He does whatever he needs to do, like lying, treating people unkindly, manipulating, making Josh feel like he's friends. Literal, like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fraud.
Yeah. Josh points out, this is fraud. People can go to jail for this stuff.
Exactly.
And that's also the difference. Jamie's character seems like someone who, also he was gaslighting like crazy. Josh was going nuts. Remember, he was at one point, he's just like, I'm going insane. Like, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, everyone is different now. And I don't, and you're really psychologically screwing with people.
Exactly. Jamie's doing that.
Jamie's doing that to Josh.
The kind of art that I respect is the one which is trying to tell other people's stories and to shed light on certain things that people may not be aware of, and maybe to change the world in a positive way. And so whatever, if you have that as the backdrop for everything that you're doing, I think, when you're doing stuff like Werner Herzog does, like you're not going to take advantage of people. You're not going to be interviewing people or fabricating stories or like interviewing people in an altruistic way, and you're not going to be manipulating people and making people believe that you are genuinely friends with them when you know that you are not. When I said like I can relate to this, is because of the fact that I have had a Jamie, someone who I fell in love with, like a friend of mine that I loved. I'm still not over this friend. I am in love with her, like I just... I think she was most likely my first experience with that kind of friendship where you just have that, just like this absolute incredible affinity to this person. They felt like we were so in tune with each other. She knew me. I felt like so loved and nurtured by her in so many ways. There were a lot of beautiful parts of that in that relationship, but at the same time, there was a lot of manipulation. I did stuff. And then in the end, you realize, oh my gosh, I literally put in all of this work for this person, and they're reaping the rewards of this, basically my part of who I am, because all of these things that you do, like this documentary making, it's such a deep part and meaningful part of Josh's identity. And this person did the same thing to me, something that they valorized and something that they, I guess, envied for themselves and wanted, but didn't actually quite have the tools enough to pursue, but I did. And so they used me to help them get to this point. And so that really hurt, because, the whole time I'm like, I'm doing this for my friend. I never saw, like, you only see the patterns after. When it's all well and done, you only see that.
Yeah. Josh goes through that in the movie. He puts it all together, and then it finally hits him. Wow, I have been played over and over and over again. It all finally makes sense. But until that, you're just always a little confused, and then you have suspicions, but you can't quite tie it all together until it finally clicks.
By the way, this is not to say that I'm not even absolving Josh here of whatever the outcome of his life. He allowed it. At the end of the day, like, I allowed it, and I allowed it because I maybe had certain insecurities that this person tapped into, which is the thing again, when you're an insecure person sometimes, the insecurities that you have of yourself, you think that other people see you in that same way.
No matter what people tell you, you won't believe them.
Exactly. No matter what people tell you,
father-in-law's being honest about, you came over, made me watch this 6-hour-long documentary.
Exactly.
I think you could trim a couple parts. I'm just here to help you out. This is why you had me watch it in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just giving a little bit of constructive criticism, but everything that Josh is receiving, Josh and Jamie, it's easy to get confused. Yeah. Josh, everything he's receiving is, you're not good enough for my daughter, you're not a good documentarian, you're not worthy. That's everything he's receiving.
Yeah. That is the thing that Jamie is able to take it to exploit.
And there's great details there where little things that show that Jamie's very insecure and actually very, his facade will snap and break when they're walking, and then a cyclist gets close to them and Jamie just screams at the guy, But, kind of, there's a split second there of the change from the persona that he likes to put on, where we're just really chill and, young happy people that we just like to experience and live spontaneously and be in the moment, be present and love life and enjoy everything. And then when that happens, you're like, oh, okay, so maybe is that because he's actually quite an insecure person himself to be that manipulative and needing to, do whatever it takes to get successful and get that praise from people. You'd actually have to be very insecure. So something like that can kind of snap him out of his facade for a little second.
Yeah. I have definitely learned, not just from this movie, but where if someone does something wrong, you just tap out. Like you extricate yourself from this person's life. Yeah. And that's it. You do not try and talk to other people and try to make other people see that this person is a horrible person. Isolate, ostricize him.
Don't even try to explain.
Don't try to explain. Just tap out. Just be like, you know what? It's not working for me. If it's working for you, great. But if you want to continue to hang out with this person, go ahead. That is on you. Yeah. But for me personally, I don't want to.
Yeah. Let Jamie burn his bridges inevitably, as he will.
Yeah.
Because he's that kind of person that,
The other thing that stood out is the fact of them not really knowing each other themselves and not really being certain of who they are and what they want to be. Yeah. I don't think that really ends. I don't think that there's a point in life. And I don't think that if you're in your 40s and you don't know what the heck you're doing and you feel like, as they say, like you're a kid in an adult body, I don't think that's not weird. No. That's not you being nostalgic for youth. Yeah. That's just you being truthful about the fact that getting older in terms of age doesn't necessarily mean like you have to be at a certain position or you have to know certain things. And that's okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
In the end, a year later, they decide that, okay, we're going to have kids and we're going to go adopt, right? And I was like, what does that mean? Again, that was an issue for me in the sense of like, okay, now they've settled into, they're more confident about being adults. And so they're going to have a baby. What? Yeah. Just because there are plenty of people who decide not to have babies, but they are adults. Yeah. And so I thought that was a little bit.
I mean, it might just be something that they've decided, it was something they did try for a while and maybe they gave up and they said, no, let's just do a different route. We can adopt. But let's commit to something that is clearly something that we get into arguments about, over and over again. And maybe it's a little bit of giving into the fact that all their friends are having kids, which happens too. People get into this thing of like, well, we just can't be 25 anymore. And the friends that we can relate to a lot more they're in a different stage of life. So maybe we should join in on that. Maybe that would help.
Yeah, they're because that's the thing, right? They're all over the place. They are either no, we totally couldn't have kids. We are happy. The freedom we have, we can just go to Europe if we want to go. Yeah. But then they reflect on, but we didn't go to Europe. We did. We had all that time. You kept saying your job, you know, your documentary, which you haven't even finished. We never actually ended up going. Yeah. And then they're like, yeah, but we wanted to have kids. We tried so hard. We actually did want to have kids. Yeah. Josh talks to the father who he thinks. The father-in-law who he thinks disapproves of him because partly because of him never having kids. Yeah. And he's like, no, but we did want to have kids. We tried so hard and we did all these things and it sucked. It was hard. And then he talks about how he's envious of his friend. You know, I think I was just kind of envious of you guys who had kids. But then, you know, there is that back and forth. Yeah. And then even at the end, when they go to now adopt, they're sitting in front of this kid playing on their phone. And they go from excitement to fear again. Mm-hmm. The wife is very clear. Yeah. With the wife, she's just kind of like, and so you're like, oh God, these people are probably gonna go back and not go pick the kid up, right? Yeah.
There is something sometimes about just overthinking, and I think it's easy to just overthink this stuff, and sometimes you just have to choose a path or choose a decision you do, and accept that that's part of your life. I think but they're the kind of people, and it's easy to fall into that. It's not like that's a specific kind of thing. A lot of people have that a lot where. You know, especially now, you see so many different ways of living your life and careers or just places, lifestyles or ways to set up your home or whatever. There's so many different ways to do everything. And it's hard to just pick one.
Exactly, yeah.
But you just got to pick one and be like, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I like the line with Jamie's wife, the millennial wife, who was saying, you know, we talk about sometimes about not like what we're going to be like when we're old or how it's going to go. And really, I realize it's going to be like everyone else. Yeah. We're going to age the way everyone else does. Yeah. We're not special. We're not going to be different, but we like to kind of feel like this generation, we're doing things different, or it's going to be, something special. Yeah, that's the stuff. That's the stuff we mentioned. Yeah. Is the stuff. Yeah. There's the stuff in there that we mentioned there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, what do you guys think about while we're young? Anything that you want to get off your chest? Bring it up.
Yeah, share your thoughts on our thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And until next time, that's a wrap.